So what Mr. Balcerowicz has already touched upon is the stagnation that obviously, the economic stagnation, that obviously the media wants us to sell as if it were a given. I tell you, if we stagnate, it still stand. And still stand definitely doesn't help us to become a prosperous, successful society. And after all, I think all here in the room, especially in this location, share the idea of capitalism, of wealth, of well-being, and this is nothing negative. Capitalism, as a matter of fact, is positive, is good. I'm proud to be a capitalist. And capitalism doesn't mean anything else but the protection of our property rights. And we also have to take into account that there is no such thing as one size fits all, which also means, in other words, that there is an equality and inequality, so that we are not equal, luckily, because we all have different talents. There is one important thing that we need to consider is that we are all equal before the law. But this is a different thing. And there are groups and people who try to mix this up and to sell it, that those people who believe that there are others who have other talents and who differ, and to stick out of the masses, that they are mean, that they are bad. And this is not good, this is not true. And I don't think that this envy debate that we are leading these days, especially in Europe, is getting us anywhere. Because after all, we have to look who we compete with worldwide. And this comes to my earlier point. If we don't compete, we have still stand. And still stand these days doesn't mean staying at the same level where we are right now. As a matter of fact, other groups, other societies, other countries, other continents are overtaking us, because they still embrace the idea of competition, and they are just doing more. They are working harder, they are faster, they are more industrious, they are more innovative, they are more creative than those people who believe in big government and in that somebody else will solve our problems. We have to solve our problems ourselves. Each and every entrepreneur does know this. And if he doesn't solve the problems, then he goes bust. And I think we also have to take this as a given in our lives, and not, as I pointed out at the beginning, that this secular stagnation that was so pushed by the Financial Times, telling us that this is something that we just have to take and we can't do anything about it. I tell you, we can do something about it, and we have to. So how can we get around it? How can we create growth, not only as individuals, but as a society? And there are 10 rules, I think, that I would quickly go through with you that help us create this growth and that allow businesses to prosper, to create jobs. Because after all, in the long run, it's only enterprises that create jobs. It's not the government. Because in the long run, it's not the bureaucracy that will survive. It's the creativity and it's the hard work of the individuals that will help us get around. So the respect of the rule of law is the number one. I pointed that out already, but we still, on both levels, on the regional, on the national, and on the supranational level, and by supranational I mean European level, we have a problem with the respect of the rule of law. I mean, just looking at the Maastricht criteria, we broke them. We broke those rules that we imposed on ourselves on an international or on the European level. But my home country, Austria, for example, just to give you one example of tax laws, there is a headquarter law in Austria that if international companies come to Austria, invest, build, create jobs, create wealth there, then they have a special taxation. The recent elected government which is a coalition government, decided from one day to the other that they will get rid of this law and that they will tax those companies much higher. So first of all, there are no more incentives for international companies to come to Austria and invest there. But second, and this is even worse, because they did this in retrospective, which meant that the companies had to pay for the past years additionally, just because we needed more, the government needed more revenue. So this is definitely not something that you can build trust on. So companies left. Second most important point, this will lead us to the Euro discussion, sound money. Kicking the can down the road and doing quantitative easing and bailing out countries like Greece will not help. They have not solved their problems. In contrast to your country, you have started doing your homework, you have undergone severe savings programs, you have changed your laws, etc., but you have done something, others don't. And now the entire European people has to look at this quantitative easing that is imposed by Juncker, and it does not solve the problem. So sound money for all societies, no matter where in the world, is very important. And just on a side note, we have seen currencies come and go, and there will be many other solutions with these nice little toys in the future, and I think we should also look at the innovational aspect of this. One more important point is limited taxation, flat, smart, fair taxes. Tax competition, as a matter of fact, is a precondition for economic growth and also for our growth in Europe. And then there is something that many people call overregulation. Leszek has already touched upon this topic, but there is regulation on all levels, on the, as again, level, regional, national, and supranational. But we have to be careful that we don't fall into this trap of this one-size-fits-all and over-regulating everything just to protect the consumer. And if we look at what is going on with the food industry, if we look what is going on in the tobacco industry, just two examples. I mean, this is nothing else but a reduction of our individual freedom, because I mean, the entrepreneur can decide if he wants a hotel or a restaurant where people are allowed to smoke, and the individual can decide whether he or she wants to do that. So, as a matter of fact, smart regulation would be the ideal solution, and not this big over-regulation and under the disguise of protecting the consumer. Next point would be efficient government, and I think we all seek for that. The key, and this is what actually, especially the young generation, this question needs to be asked by you. What is the task of the government? Literally, what do you think they should provide? Should they provide the list from A to Z, or can we leave a couple of things out? Just to always to have in mind that we need individual choice and the protection of private properties, plus free and competitive markets. Because if we overregulate, if we have big government, our market is not a free one, and this is very important to keep that in mind. Another thing that I would like to stress is free trade. I mean, your region has always been open to the world, and you have traded everywhere. But if I would just want to give you one single remark, TTIP. I think free trade is very important for us, but we also need to be aware of how we deal with those agreements, how they are being put together, if it's behind closed doors or if they are also openly discussed. So free trade, yes, but openly discussed, and trade agreements are very important. And the last thing I would like to point out is entrepreneurship. People who take risk, who are also willing to fail, and you know, especially for the young generation, failure is not a problem. You're only stupid if you make the same mistakes twice or 3 times. And this is the big advantage in the US society, or I put it in Anglo-American places, where people embrace failure, where if an entrepreneur fails and goes bust, he doesn't have the red sign on. As a matter of fact, here in Europe, we treat people who are not as successful always with a rise in the eyebrow. We should not do that. We should be proud of those people who try, who work hard, who innovate, and who test. Because, again, without those people, nothing like this would happen and would be possible. And my last point is to get all those 10 points in line, which means nothing else but a framework for businesses and for individuals to live a free and life where they can choose for their own. We need brave politicians who have this bigger picture in mind and not this small idea of being re-elected and then taking taxes, stealing from people who work hard and just redistribute. Because after all, everything that you get from government is being paid by yourself. Never forget that. So this is why it's so important to keep the taxes also low and not have a big government. So we need brave politicians to do this and to get away from the illusion of growth, but to get back to the real track of growth. And I think this is very important for you. And I would like to close with a quote by Adam Smith, who actually said in 1755, "Little else is requisite to carry a state to the highest degree of opulence from the lowest barbarism, but peace, easy taxes, and a tolerable administration of justice. All the rest being brought about by the neutral course of things." In other words, by you. Thank you.
Simplemente más que preguntar por el crecimiento, quería preguntar por la defensa de la libertad. La defensa de la libertad, desde su inicio se ha dicho ya, evidentemente, conlleva responsabilidad. ¿Cómo se le puede decir a todos estos chavales jóvenes que defiendan su libertad, pero además con responsabilidad, para que su toma de decisiones conlleve también la responsabilidad de asumir las consecuencias, aun cuando sean negativas?
Of course, there is a relation between freedom and responsibility, and I would like to quote Hayek, where he says that individual freedom ends there where you simplified, where you hurt other people, where you step on other people's toes. So this is the real issue. We have to be responsible in the way that we are responsible for our actions. And this is very important if we think of entrepreneurship, if we think of our families, and if we think of our individual decisions. We are responsible for what we do, and we have to bear the consequences. And we cannot delegate those consequences. And this is why freedom is so important, because we are free to to choose which actions we take. But we need to be responsible, held responsible. We cannot blame governments and tell, hey, somebody else will take care of my mistakes, or somebody else will clean up after I have done the dirt and I have done a mistake. No, it's up to us, and this is why freedom is so important and why this correlation needs always to be considered.
Me gustaría preguntar qué puede aportar el liberalismo a aquellos que se ven atraídos, tentados por la idea de que la pobreza se resuelve con el reparto de la riqueza de los demás. Gracias.
I think you have to allow people to become rich, because to be rich and wealthy is something positive, and if we don't allow this, then we will not elevate the entire society. I know it's difficult in this envy debate that we lead. We have to get away from this envy debate and come back to the moral high grounds of achievement and of, work is something positive, work is nice, and those who do that, who do fulfill this, deserve more, full stop. And this is reality.